Those of you who have arrived at this video probably already know what this is. This is the Anker 737. I think it's otherwise known as a PowerCore 24K, and I reviewed this back in August of this year. It's become quite a popular power bank, I think, for Anker, and despite its high price tag, Black Friday, they were selling this for £100, which is probably like £40, I think, off the retail price. Anyway, I'm not here to promote the product. I'm here to talk about how long it will potentially last. Now, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just going to make some educated guesses because I've seen a lot of speculation and rumour out there on the internet with people saying, this thing is limited to 300 cycles. It's useless. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, is it though? I would be very surprised if this is hard limited, as in software, they've actually put something that means you cannot use it after it reaches 300 cycles. That seems to be what the rumour out there is suggesting, however. So firstly, I'd just like to kind of put it out there and say that that's probably not true. I cannot find anything online to categorically say that that is the truth. What is important to say here is that lithium-ion cells, the industry standard for lithium-ion cells is to have a cycle life of 300 to 500 cycles. So it's totally reasonable to say that a power bank like this will have a 300 cycle life. But what's wrong with that? 300 cycles is actually quite a lot. And yes, this might be on the lower end of the industry standard because it does suck up power very, very quickly, so presumably generates a little bit more heat than another power bank might. You can also drain the batteries quite quickly too, if you want, because of the power delivery capabilities of this. So again, probably generates a bit more heat and it just stresses the cells a little bit more. So let's say 300 is the worst case scenario. If I actually look at the screen on this one now, I can see that I'm up to 36 cycles. Now I use this all the time. I use it as a power bank for charging phones, I charge speakers, I power lights from it, I do all sorts with it. So I'm charging it, maybe not every day, but certainly regularly. And I'm only up to 36 cycles. I've been using this since mid-August 2022. It's now start of December 2022. So if you do the maths around that, you kind of figure out that this will potentially last me 3 years. And that's worst case. So let's say I'm treating it a little bit better because I usually charge it from 60 watts power delivery or 100 watts power delivery, 100 watt charger rather than the full 140. So maybe my cells will last a little bit longer. So maybe I'll get 500 cycles out of this, in which case this is going to last me 5 years. Batteries are a consumable item. 5 years is perfectly reasonable. And remember, at that 5-year mark, it'll only be a case that the SOH, the state of health of the batteries, will be at 80%. Now, there are certain reasons why under high stress charging and things like that, you might not want to use a power bank past that point. And Anker will absolutely always point out to you that you should not use the power bank after that point. In fact, the only information I could really find on this that is applicable to all their batteries is that they say a power bank will have a 300 cycle lifespan, and after that, don't use it. Because they don't want to cover any issues if the battery swells, if it overheats, if the internal resistance of the battery increases to a point that it's just going to explode. I don't know, whatever could potentially happen. But realistically, that's unlikely to happen. And it'll just won't be quite as good a capacity as it was in the past. So even at that 500 cycle mark or 300 cycle mark, it's not going to be useless necessarily. It's worth keeping an eye on to make sure it doesn't have any swelling or any issues, but it's not going to be useless. So, in summary, this is just a normal power bank. It's just got lithium-ion 18650 cells in this, 86 watt-hours of power. There's nothing different about this. The only thing that Anker have done is actually put a screen on it to tell people how many cycles it's done. And I think that actually causes more problems than it's worth for them, because you get all this speculation, all this rumour coming back where people are saying, oh my God, it's done this many and it only does 300. I've read it only does 300. If I'm proven wrong And if someone can put a link to a video or absolute fact that says this is hard limited to 300 cycles, then fine. Just take this as useful battery knowledge for any other power banks you might be using. I'd be really surprised if it does, however. But remember what a cycle of a battery is. It's not as bad as you might think. A cycle is a full discharge of the entire capacity of the cell. So if a battery has 100 watt-hour capacity and you discharge it from 100% to 75%, you've used a quarter of a cycle. If you then recharge it to 100% and discharge it to 75%, you've used half a cycle. You can do that 4 times and that's only 1 cycle. So don't forget that you're probably not using quite as many cycles as you think you are.